Living alone as an elderly man can be one of the most enriching moments of your life. Not only do you want peace and quiet, but you also want a space where you can pursue your passions, grow as a person, and enjoy the autonomy of this stage of life. I've spent an important part of my life alone, and the expertise I've acquired is something I hold dear. Today, I'm not just discussing a list of benefits of living alone. I'm delving deeper into the mental and practical advantages motivated by what many others like you and me are sharing on online communities and platforms. So if you're already living alone or thinking about it, stay with me. This journey can be the absolute most rewarding chapter of your life. Number 1. Personal development and self-discovery. Living alone as an elderly man is an amazing opportunity for personal development. The time and space to reflect on your life, decisions, and future are yours alone. It's a moment for self-discovery, where you can discover who you truly are and what you want out of life. I remember a specific moment in my life when I found myself at a crossroads. The commotion of daily life had drowned out my inner voice for a while, and I had no idea what I truly wanted anymore. But when I began to live alone, something changed. The peaceful evenings and solitary weekends proved abundant ground for introspection. I began journaling, something I had not done since I was a young man, and in those pages, I began to re-engage with the aspirations and passions I would set aside. One man I met on a forum shared his story about the way living alone in his late 50s helped him to reconnect with himself. After a long working life and the loss of a marriage, he relocated into a small cabin by the lake. In that location, he started journaling and reading books, and he ultimately picked up meditation. He talked about how living alone encouraged him to strip away the layers of cultural expectations and re-engage with his true self. It's this kind of personal development that can be sincerely transformative. Number 2. Control over your surroundings. Living alone means you have full authority over your surroundings. Whether it's keeping your room immaculately clean or embracing a more relaxed, cluttered style, the decision is completely yours. You can set up your furniture, design the space, and arrange your belongings exactly the way you want them, making a living place that feels unique. I have a close friend who, after his divorce, relocated into a welcoming small house in the countryside. He was an obsessive collector of vintage cameras, something his wife never fully understood. But now that he is living alone, he has repurposed one of the empty rooms into a gallery for his collection. He told me how stepping into that room every morning inspired him with pride and happiness. It was a room that was completely his own, reflecting his hobbies and personality without compromise. An elderly gentleman further explained how once his children moved out, he converted his home into a reflection of his personality and interests. He decorated his space with antiques, household heirlooms, and bookshelves stacked with his favorite books. His home became a gallery of his life's adventure, and this capacity to manage his surroundings gave him tremendous happiness. Number 3. Independence and confidence. Living alone as an elderly person promotes a sense of freedom and confidence. You become in charge of your own life, making decisions and facing difficulties on your own terms. This freedom can be highly effective, specifically as you age. I can still remember the first time I needed to fix something around my home by myself. It was a leaky faucet, something I had always depended on other people to take care of. But there I was alone, with no one to call. I took a deep breath, watched a few tutorials on YouTube, and got to work. The sense of pride I felt when I eventually fixed it was undefinable. It wasn't just about the faucet. It was about showing myself that I was capable of handling whatever came my way. One man in his 70s shared on an online forum how living alone gave him a renewed sense of self-assurance. After his wife died, he was initially uncertain about living alone, but gradually he learned how to handle the household, prepare his own food, and even take care of small repairs. This newfound freedom gave him a sense of happiness and fulfillment that he hadn't felt in many years. Number 4. The freedom to be yourself. One of the major benefits of living alone as an older guy is the complete freedom it offers. If you live by yourself, you're in charge of what your day looks like, from the moment you get up until the time you retire to bed. There's no need to compromise or adjust your preferences to fit anybody else's agenda or desires. I remember that when I first started living alone, the sheer enjoyment of not having to comply with anyone else's schedules was liberating. There's something immensely satisfying about waking up when you want to, preparing breakfast precisely the way you want it, and spending your morning reading or working on a hobby without interruptions. For example, a man in his early 60s shared how living alone helped him rediscover his passion for painting. Without anyone else around, he set up a little painting studio in his living room where he could continue painting late into the night without worrying about bothering anyone. He explained how his nights were his most creative and productive moments, something he could never have done in a shared living room. For me, it's having the freedom of discovering your hobbies and interests, regardless of how unconventional, which makes living alone so enjoyable. Number 5. Peace and quiet. The tranquility associated with living alone is typically considered one of the top benefits. After years of raising a family, working, and handling different responsibilities, most older men appreciate the tranquility and calm that solitude offers. It's an opportunity to reflect, relax, or just enjoy the serenity without the distractions of a busy household. I clearly remember the first moment I experienced the deep solitude of living alone. It was early Saturday morning, and the world outside still felt asleep. I got myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, enjoying nothing but the birds chirping and the soft rustle of leaves. It was at that time that I felt an overwhelming sense of serenity, a kind of tranquility that only occurs when there's nobody else around needing your attention. Imagine having a morning routine where you drink your coffee in stillness, maybe on a balcony overlooking your backyard, without the hum of conversations or the obligation to get things done. This tranquil place becomes a sanctuary for your ideas, enabling you to think more deeply, engage with yourself on a more profound level, and enjoy the little pleasures in life. Number 6. Financial independence. While living alone can seem more costly at first glance, many elderly men discover that it actually supports financial freedom. Without the need to help others, you have total control over your money. You can decide to downsize, relocate to a more affordable place, or just manage your finances in a way that prioritizes your needs and desires. I remember a conversation I had with an old colleague who, after retirement, chose to sell his big family home and relocate into a small apartment downtown. Initially, he was worried about the costs of living alone, but soon he discovered that the reduced expenses enabled him to live decently and even engage in some of his pleasures. He no longer had to worry about maintaining a big house, and his extra savings meant he could take up photography, which he had intended to do but never had the time or resources for. One story from a forum that stood out for me was about an elderly gentleman who decided to move to a smaller home. He talked about how that decision not only decreased his living expenses, but also saved up money for traveling and other activities he had always dreamed of. He spent his 70th birthday on his own trip to Europe, which he said would not have been possible if he continued to manage a bigger household. Number 7. Improved mental health. Living alone as an elderly individual can have a favorable impact on your mental health. For many people, solitude is an avenue of healing. It's an ideal opportunity to step away from the burdens and expectations of social life and find tranquility within yourself. Whether it's through meditation, physical activity, or just enjoying your own company, living alone allows you to concentrate on what actually makes you happy. I remember a particularly terrible point in my life when everything felt overwhelming. It was during these periods that I truly valued the tranquility of living alone. I would take long strolls in the late afternoon just to clear my head and interact with nature. The stillness of my house became a sanctuary of refuge, where I could process thoughts and emotions without any external pressure. I also came across a wonderful post from an older gentleman in his late 60s on Reddit, who shared how living alone helped him control his anxiety. Without the continual noise and expectations of other people, he was able to set up a routine that prioritized his mental health. He practiced meditation in his living room, took long strolls in nature, and learned to value his own company. The serenity he discovered during his solitude was something he never experienced before. Number 8. Strengthened relationships. Surprisingly, living alone can actually strengthen your relationships with other people. Without constant company, the significance of your interactions increases. You develop a greater appreciation for family and maximize every interaction. I experienced this in my own life. When I started living alone, I discovered that my relationships with loved ones became more intentional. Rather than seeing them out of responsibility, I truly looked forward to our time together. The conversations ended up being deeper and more passionate, and I enjoyed those moments much more than before. A heartwarming example comes from an older gentleman who, after living alone for several years, shared that his relationships with his children had become stronger. Instead of the stress that sometimes came from living under the same roof, their visits became more devoted and compassionate. He discovered that he looked forward much more to their moment together, and they, in turn, enjoyed the comfortable, welcoming atmosphere of his home. Number 9. Rediscovery of simple pleasures. Living alone grants you an opportunity to rediscover the simple pleasures in life. Without the interruptions of other people, you can truly enjoy the things that bring you happiness, whether it's reading an engaging book, gardening, or just enjoying a cup of coffee while watching the sunset. I've always been a morning person, but it was not until I started living alone that I sincerely began to enjoy the peaceful serenity of early mornings. I initiated a small garden in my backyard, an idea I had always wanted to do but never found the opportunity for. Now my mornings are spent aiming at my plants, enjoying my coffee, and enjoying the first rays of sunlight. It's an ordinary routine, but it brings me so much happiness and fulfillment. I came across an online video in which an elderly man shared his daily practice of tending to his garden. Living alone enabled him to spend hours each day cultivating vegetables, something he regarded as deeply fulfilling. He talked about the excitement of watching his garden grow and the happiness of knowing that he had made this little oasis of elegance in his life. Living alone as an elderly person is not just about solitude. It's about embracing a lifestyle that brings tranquility, independence, and personal development. This is a chance to find yourself, follow your passions, and create a life you love. Whether it's serenity, financial freedom, or chance to grow and reflect, living alone can be one of the best decisions you make. If you're thinking about it, understand that you're not alone in your thoughts. Many have walked this path and have considered it to be a deeply satisfying journey. Take the plunge, and you may find that living alone unlocks your most meaningful and enriching chapter. Feel free to share your opinion and stories in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing if you found the video helpful.